this right here is my own expression. I am my own authority because I am teaching what I'm teaching. But if it was Bruce Lee, he's teaching Jeet Kune Do, and somebody else that's saying, well, I'm teaching Jeet Kune Do too, but they're not Bruce Lee. And only Bruce Lee could really say, you have it, and you understand it. You can pass it on.
Is there a difference between Kung Fu and Jeet Kune Do?
Kung Fu is like the real meaning of the Kung Fu is that inner discipline to better yourself. It's like really hard work. So Kung Fu is not just about martial arts, but a lot of people have great Kung Fu. So actually the word kind of derives from Confucius, because you know Confucius is a great scholar. So his Kung Fu was great in those studies. So then that word ended up being used for like many different things. So in Chinese they'd say, oh, that person has great Kung Fu. He might be great at billiards. Or this person is good at building homes. Then he has great Kung Fu. Yeah, it's just like that discipline, hard work, perseverance. That's like Kung Fu. It just, because when Bruce Lee brought it over to America, they just started associating with combat, but they misunderstood it. They just think, if you look in the dictionary, it says Kung Fu is a Chinese fighting system, but that's not the real meaning. The real meaning is that discipline. So Bruce Lee had discipline in not just martial arts, but in acting, being a philosopher, a teacher, a father. Like he was good at dancing. He was good in so many different things. He was a man of great Kung Fu. So then when Bruce Lee opened his first school, he named it like Jun Fan Kung Fu. Jun Fan is his name in Chinese. So it's like, it basically translates to Bruce Lee's Kung Fu. So when you're learning from Bruce Lee, you're learning his Kung Fu, like all of it, like not just the combat, but just his way of living, his way, his being. So then like there's a lot of followers of Jesus, for example. People in a way are kind of learning from Jesus's Kung Fu, like his way. You know, Bruce Lee's Kung Fu, and then there's like Jet Li's Kung Fu, Jackie Chan's Kung Fu, and then Freddie's, like my Kung Fu.
Sure.
So then Kung Fu could be anybody that's teaching their own way. They have their own Kung Fu. Now Jeet Kune Do it means the way of the intercepting fist. He created that brand. So it's like his brand, just like Apple, you know, and then like Subway, McDonald's, they create their brand. And then that brand gets protected for businesses so that it cannot get corrupted, right? So his brand was the Jeet Kune Do. Then he started creating his schools. And I think he had about 3 different schools. But the thing is, when he passed away, his brand became unprotected. And then when people take the brand, but then it's not Bruce Lee anymore, and then they don't have his permission, it's like somebody stealing a company's name, like Walmart, and then opening their own store and calling it Walmart, but then that's against the law. You have to get permission from...
There are schools that are Jeet Kune Do schools?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't realize.
Yes.
Some in Chicago as well?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
So that's a source of controversy for people who go, how could you do that? You were
Yeah.
inspired by Bruce Lee, as we all were, but you were not trained by him. You may be missing the most important ingredient.
That's exactly.
Okay.
That's where it's exactly going. And then the thing is, what they're doing, like Danny Asano was one of Bruce Lee's students, right? So then there'll be people that would study under Danny Asano, and then end up claiming Jeet Kune Do because, I studied with Danny Asano.
Yes.
But it's still not Bruce Lee.
Yes.
So essentially, it's like the proper way would be more like Danny Asano's Kung Fu, not Bruce Lee's Kung Fu.
Yes.
But Danny Asano, he's not Chinese, he's a Filipino background.
Okay.
So it wouldn't even be proper for him to even use the word Kung Fu.
Kung Fu.
So he has his own, it's like Filipino stick fighting, like
Yeah.
Kali. So he promotes that. So if somebody's studying under Danny Asano, Danny Asano's Kali, then that'd make more sense. But then they go ahead and go roundabout, I studied under Danny Asano, this is Jeet Kune Do, but it's still not, so it's like, even like recently, like the founder, the CEO of the Apple passed away, but he legitimately passed on all the rights to it to, I think, Tim Cook or somebody, to take over.
Yeah.
That's how it has to happen within the martial arts, but because the martial arts is so underdeveloped, there's a lot of fraudulent things going on, and people don't understand. They just think, I want to learn Jeet Kune Do,
Yeah.
but then they go to Jeet Kune Do school, but it's not Bruce Lee, but then they're claiming Jeet Kune Do.
Yeah.
And what I'm basically saying is, that's not real Jeet Kune Do. The only real Jeet Kune Do is directly from him, you know, from his movies and his writings. And then all you can do is try to understand it. And if you think you understand it, it's still not the original Jeet Kune Do.
Yes.
But it might be your interpretation, but it still wouldn't be right to call it Jeet Kune Do because you didn't get his permission. So then it'd be like maybe your own way of the martial arts.
If he had written something of saying, please practice my way, just like Jesus said, you can do what I do, and you may be in fact have more gifts than me. He's giving everyone permission in his name. But you're saying when it comes to Bruce Lee, he really didn't give anybody permission. If he did, would it make a difference?
I think as we go further into the work, you'll see it.
Okay.
You know, but I don't want to state too much. But from what I do remember from his readings, he would always say that his style is no style.
Okay.
Like no limitation should be your limitation. So you got to also understand that he opened up the 3 schools, and for some reason he decided to stop teaching, go into acting, and then he shut down all the schools. So
that says something.
yeah, that says something there. And then in addition, they even said in this book, like right in the introduction, that he didn't want to publish the book because he didn't want the book to become a how-to martial arts book. You know, he was very well aware that people will start using his name. As soon as he gets famous, they'll start using his name to make a name for themselves and to build. And they still do that to this day.
Christians
you know, so
do it all the time.
Yeah.
These ministers,
Yeah.
we're Christian. And some of them do so much good, but some of them. So it's a real source of how do you control something, or do you even try to? And you're saying it's important to protect Bruce Lee's name and his Kung Fu.
I think it's at least important to try, because I mean, you look at the firearms. I mean, yes, there's problems with it, but at least they try to regulate it. You know, they say, okay, at least, you know, the FBI has to do background checks, and you have to, you know, submit this to the government, and you have to pass this class in order to get your permit. They at least try. That's not going to stop like guns being on the streets completely, but at least they're putting the effort. Like just the effort alone to try to stop fraudulent activity is important. You know what I mean? Like, so even like the use of currency. I mean, imagine if people just go home and just start printing out dollar bills. I mean, the government is all over trying to stop that fraudulent activity. And all businesses, they always try their hardest to protect their brand, their label. Even Michael Jordan, I've heard recently, sued somebody in China for using his logo, you know, and putting it on their products. And all businesses will always do the best they can to protect their business. If they don't, it ends up undermining their business and their creativities. I mean, just like I've heard the Matrix, I heard that they took the ideas from some lady, and then they end up she sued them and then won, and then ended up getting money because they took the ideas from her book.
Wow.
You know, there's a lot of plagiarism. Yeah. You know, and even like with YouTube, you know, like we put on music and then it automatically gets flagged by the systems to identify, you know, you're not supposed to be using this music, making money off this music.
Yeah.
I mean, I think as an artist, all artists, I think from musicians to everybody, they want to protect their work, because the more that people take it and then distribute it without their permission, the more it undermines their work. Unless the artist purposefully makes the decision, I'm going to create this work for all the people to use freely without, you know, any restrictions.
Yes.
You know?
There's, in the computer world, there's this open access, and my son really believes in it. And I said, why is it so important? And he said, basically what it allows is people to share information that they've worked so hard on, but they choose to take all this programming work and to put it out into the open domain. So why would they do that? Because they have such a love for moving it forward, and they know they can only go so far, that they'll say, look, I did this little piece, thanks so much because you gave me all these other pieces, and I'm going to put them together, And they said, not Apple. Apple is not open source at all. It really controls, but Android phones, it is open source. Completely different philosophy as to how you go about living in this world. Can it be controlled? Do you want to have those fights, or do you want to give it away? I'm kind of an old guy, so I don't know what people are going to come up with, how they're going to go about it. But it does sound quite interesting that some people say, I just want to share, like Wikipedia, right?
Yeah.
It's all shared. Now, wait a minute, nobody's making any money, and they keep giving all this for free? Yeah, that's how it works. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. I mean, I understand that aspect. I see the positives and the negatives, but I think with, like, because you brought up Jesus, for example.
Yes.
And I would agree, like, when it comes to somebody like Jesus, like Buddha,
Yes.
like, when you're trying to share compassion and love, then everybody, you know, like,
Yes.
I think everybody should, if everybody could become better people, that's always a great thing,
Yes.
you know.
Even
But
if they goof it up.
yeah, yeah. So I think in that aspect, sharing is great. But the very unique thing about the martial arts is that it, like the firearms, it has to be controlled, because you're trying to, in my opinion, it has to be controlled because you're sharing like lethal techniques of like trying to hurt people.
Yes.
And that, if it gets in the wrong hands, it's not a good thing. So I mean, even with all the sharing, the social media, the government still restricts, like, you know, how to make a bomb, you know, how to do this, how to, you know, like all these lethal things, like how to poison somebody. I mean, they would restrict things because those are lethal
Yes.
things that only certain people should have access to. I mean, if you look at even the medical field, the doctors will only have, they have to prescribe certain drugs because these drugs can be used for like bad things, and they have to decide who will have access to these drugs for what purposes. And with the martial arts, I feel like a martial arts teacher, it's very important that he decides who are the people that should learn this and that will do good with it.
Yes.
But if Bruce Lee was just like a sage, like a Confucius or a Jesus or a Buddha, then I would see that the open sharing would apply. But because Bruce Lee is more like a martial artist, there's only parts that could be open, which is like the spiritual parts,
Yes.
opposed to the combative parts. That's why when I do my videos, for example, I don't really feel comfortable teaching people, oh, this is how you punch faster, this is how you hurt somebody, because I don't even know who I'm talking to.
Yeah.
But if I'm showing them, okay, Eastern philosophy, this is how you better understand yourself, this is how you know, become less stressed, this is how you become more peaceful, this is how you learn to, even Bruce Lee in the movie, the Enter the Dragon, you know, the art of fighting without fighting, like learning how to, you know, avoid a fight when you really don't really have to fight. Like those should be shared with everybody.
Yes.
But like the techniques of like, okay, this is how you knock somebody out within 2 seconds, that to me should be restricted, because that to me is similar to like a firearm. You know, it's like giving somebody something and then now they have the power to do something bad with it if they so choose to. But the difference with the firearm is I could give you a firearm, I could essentially take it back. But if I give you the knowledge and the ability to turn your body into a weapon, I can't really take that back anymore. Because I've taught you how to hurt somebody really, really bad, and I can't take that away anymore. So I think the martial arts, in my opinion, there has to be at least some effort to try to restrict it in some way, opposed to just sharing it out all to the open. But if we're like teaching, if he was teaching like somebody how to dance, I wouldn't see a problem with that, unless it's a business thing, whereas like every time he's teaching people for free, it's hurting his business and he's losing customers. Then it becomes more of a business issue, opposed to just like an issue of like safety or just something that of value that martial art teachers should abide by, you know. So
what about the military? They take 18 and 19-year-old young men and they give them basic training. In some cases it's 6 weeks or 12 weeks depending. And part of that basic training not only is the fitness, but it's the combat. And they're giving it to anybody. So they're teaching them how to fight, how to kill, how to use a bayonet, how to use the butt of their gun. And they're teaching all these people. They don't really know who they've got. But then they can control those people for the time that they are enlisted for 2 years, and they can teach them a lot of discipline. Is that different than a business model, or is that different than Kung Fu?
I think
They teach you how to kill them, essentially.
the military, I don't know that much about the process, but I am familiar with the law enforcement process.
Okay.
But with the military, I feel that there is some steps that they probably do have to go to. Because even Bruce Lee, from what I remember, he enlisted in the military, but they denied him because one of his legs was longer than the other leg.
No
You know,
kidding.
yeah, they denied him, and then he went to do something else.
Yes.
So the military will deny certain people. I think they might put you through a psychological test,
Sure.
and if you don't pass the test, you might get denied. Or a physical test, because even in law enforcement, if you don't pass the physical test, you'll get denied. Law enforcement, for sure, you go through the psychological test. They'll also evaluate your criminal history and everything like that. So there is some type of process, and then once they get in, they show them those lethal techniques. But I think what the difference with the military is they're preparing people for war to fight for the country. And if they do too many restrictions, first of all, I think it'd be really difficult. It's hard enough for them to even get people to enlist.
Yes.
Because a lot of people don't want to go to war. The people, they don't want to fight. So then they're going to be like, who wants to fight? And then they cannot be too strict, because then their army will not be big enough to fight against another country.
Yes.
So then, for the purpose of protecting the country, they will enlist more people and train people in combat to protect the country. So I can understand that aspect, because they're trying to protect the country. And then and like you said, while they're in their control, they have control of what guns that they're going to be using, or how, what they're going to be taught.
How they behave
Yeah.
overall, and they control so much of their
Yeah.
behavior for that period of time.
For that period of time. And then, I mean, realistically, in modern times, the most dangerous things that they're going to show them are using firearms. I mean, the Bruce Lee stuff, yes, it's dangerous, but this is unarmed combat. That's nothing compared to the firearms. So they would receive very minimum of what Bruce Lee would actually teach, maybe less than 10%.
Sure.
And then the rest would be a lot of firearms training, and then they could restrict the firearms, because as soon as they're done with the military, they just take all the guns away. And then they try to buy them, and then they'll check their background and be like, well, you're not allowed to buy it. So then they restrict their ability to have access to these deadly weapons. But then some, of course, still have access, because, recently you got one of the Marines ended up killing those officers, if you read about that, when it comes to that, I can see that's how they restrict the access to the armed firearms. But the military, even the military, they do not have the type of training that Bruce has as far as unarmed combat is concerned. It's like very, very
few
minimal.
SEALs,
Yeah.
Green Berets, those are the people that are taught. And I know a couple, and it's amazing. They just look like normal people. They look like they're so calm. Well, in a way, like yourself, once you've arrived at a certain level of personal defense, you're relaxed, Why would you not be? It's not television. You're not constantly going into bars and hurting people like they do on TV. I guess some people would like that aspect, but it frightens me what they do in those cages. How they dehumanize each other. It's just not right.
Yeah.
It's worse than boxing, and boxing did terrible things over the years. You could see what happened to people's brains. I have no idea what's going to happen to these poor people.
Yeah. And that's why I wanted to start making videos on this again, because it's like I wanted to take that energy away from the cage, because that's what's so popular now,
Yes.
and bring it back to something more spiritual, more like a way of life. And it's just because they're associating Bruce Lee with what's going on with the cage. They're saying he's the father of that. But I'm trying to say, through his own words, yeah, they're saying that he's the father of MMA. That's like what they're using that phrase.
Yeah.
And I'm saying he's not the father of MMA, he's the father of Jeet Kune, the Tao of Jeet Kune.
Yes.
And there's a clear difference. And through his own words, I want to illustrate to the people, he is not the father of that. He is the father of this. You know, and
I see your passion.
yeah,
And I know you're very passionate about this, and I'm just wondering, where does it all come from? And I can see if they said he's the father of this, and you're saying that isn't at all who he was.
yeah,
It just isn't.
yeah,
And don't say that. That's wrong.
yeah,
And then you're saying I can prove it in a sense. Here's in his own words.
yes, yes. You know, and like I don't watch that stuff, but just I mean, even today, there was a fight that just happened in the cage, and it was between these two fighters, and I just saw some clips of it, and their faces were just like bloodied up like crazy,
Oh, sure.
like even way worse than boxing.
Oh, sure.
You know, and it was just like I was like, wow, you know, it's just like they're going through. There's a lot of sustained damage that the fighters are going through, but then also just. It's just like the children. I mean, rather than looking up to like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and like Power Rangers and Karate Kid, they're looking at that and they're labeling that, okay, this is martial arts.
Yes.
And that's the problem that I have, is that in my eyes, that's not martial arts. This is martial arts.
Yes.
You know, and that's why I feel that it's important to kind of bring back that energy in his own words of what, to remind people, you know, like what the martial arts is, you know. But yeah, this is the
I understand.
part of what is really important to me, you know.
I can see that.
Yeah,
And I can see why. So
Yeah.
I'm glad we have an opportunity to have this kind of introduction to both the book and why you chose this book and why you're getting the word out.
yeah,
Because you respect and admire him, and he's a mentor to you.
yeah,
And it's just, you're not going to allow his name to be tarnished.
yeah,
You know, for yourself to the extent possible.
yeah. And, you know, and I think I haven't read this book for probably over 10 years.
Oh, okay.
You know, so for me to go back to this at this age,
Yes.
I think I could bring like even deeper understanding.
Sure.
Because he died at 32.
Yes.
I'm 34 now.
Yes.
And now I think maybe I have more life experiences to kind of interpret it to even greater extent. And even speaking to you,
Sure.
I think it's great to have you bring your experience into it as well. Because I think a lot of it is just, it's difficult to understand. And that's why it gets misunderstood. That's why people say, oh, that's MMA. And then, because they don't understand. But if they encounter a video like this, to get them to reflect a little more deeply, then they might get a deeper understanding, you know.
How many people are hungry for the inner life? Because what you're sharing is who he was as a man and how he was passionate about his Kung Fu, what it meant to be Bruce Lee, and how he brought himself to be at a level that most of us never nearly achieved. We never really worked that hard. And maybe he's going to explain to us why it was so important to him. You know, but how many people want to? It's not visual. They can't see blood. They're not going to see a quick winner and a loser. They're not going to see somebody doing some incredible thing. Well, I could do that to that bully at school. It's all that animus, anger, that they don't get access to. And you're sitting here calmly and saying, I want to share something with you. But what you could do is just say, let's spend some time together. I'm going to read this to you. This is what I believe. Here's some questions. Here's some answers. It's wonderful that they get a chance.
Yeah.
And the question is, who's your audience?
Yeah.
What age?
Yeah.
Right? And you don't know. You're just putting it out there.
Yeah.
And this part you can share with anybody.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, what I think is like what I'm doing here is creating that balance, because the people, I mean, you could turn on the television, you could find all the violence you want, all the violent video games, all the violent movies, all the violent common sport, but you don't find like teachings like this, not in mass media.
No.
You have to like seek in the libraries and find like a book out of like thousands of books
Sure.
to find the right book. And I'm trying to, I think this is the way to balance it out, because they're not going to get that bloody mess from me. They're going to get it from everything already.
Yeah.
But if they get to me for this, that could be the light that just flips, just
Yes.
turns it on in their mind, like, wow, you know, like, and then they see things so differently all of a sudden, you know. Because, I mean, I have so much respect and I admire him so much because he's the one who introduced me to Eastern philosophy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's the one who introduced me to it, and I wasn't a fighter, but I had no idea about Eastern philosophy until I started reading his books.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I started to read his books, it transformed my life into a whole different path.
Yes.
So I have so much thanks to give back to him. It's almost like I feel compelled to pass on the message. Just like what a lot of Christians do with Christianity or
Absolutely.
the message of Jesus. They change their life so much. That's why they're all, everywhere they go, they're trying to get people to pay attention to, you know, what affected them. That's how I feel about his work.
Yes.
Like, it affected me so much that it's like there's an energy drawing me towards, you have to do something. You can't just keep your mouth shut.
Yes.
You got to say something, because even though you might not have that many people listening to you, there are people listening.
Mm-hmm.
And you are making a change, even if it's like little by little. You know, so I think it's important, you know.
As important as it is to read the book, to hear in your own words why you do this, why you want it, what he is to you. That's the passion that people will go, oh, I'll listen to that then. You know? It's good to read to people, but it's also good to tell your story.
Yeah.
And of course, you've done that to a certain extent on some of your other videos.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think this is the first time that I've been quoting Bruce Lee. I mean, I had this channel up like over like about 4 years,
Okay.
and I never really quoted Bruce. I would always quote Osho,
Sure.
and Osho is like pretty much what Bruce Lee led me to.
Uh-huh.
You know, because one of Bruce Lee's favorite philosophers was J. Krishnamurti. I started to read up on J. Krishnamurti. I really loved J. Krishnamurti.
Yeah.
But then I found out about Osho. I really liked Osho's even more.
Uh-huh.
And I've been studying Osho for like over 9 years right now.
Uh-huh.
And that's all I read. And I always bring up Osho, but I'm starting to understand that a lot of people are looking to me for the martial arts, and the Osho part is just kind of like too far off for them. If I bring it back to the Bruce Lee, it's more about their level of understanding, because this is the beginning, this is the foundation, this is the ABCs,
Yes.
you know, and this is how they can relate to me. And then for me to come back after over 10 years to analyze this book, because this is the most comprehensive and complex books of all the ones that he's written.
It is.
It's very philosophical.
Uh-huh.
So for me to try to analyze it and help people understand it, I think this is to me is a great thing, you know, because it actually motivates me, because I'm excited to share my interpretation of this, you know.
Yes.
And I'm looking forward to it. You know, if I could actually get through this whole book, that'd be great.
How many chapters are there? 150 pages.
There's 205 pages, so it's not that like 208. It's not that long.
But surprisingly, if you read it, and you read maybe 2 pages in 20 minutes, and answer some questions, you may have 100 sessions.
Yeah, it's gonna be well over.
Yeah.
For sure. Because I mean, this is the third
Couple
video,
years.
or this is the third video that I made,
Sure.
or the fourth. This is the fourth one, and I didn't even get to page. We didn't even get to page 7 yet. You know.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm excited to
Well, it's wonderful.
to work at it.
Yeah.
Because even it might even take 3 years, 4 years.
He
You know.
can complete the book from his standpoint. I know a man who was a professor, a world-renowned professor, and he wanted to explain James Joyce Ulysses. So I listened to maybe 20 sessions, 20 hours, and I think he was on page 50. And he says, this is a 10-year project.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, he committed 10 years of his life just for this book.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But he sure opened it up, because without that, I wouldn't have had a clue.
Yes.
It's a very deep, complicated book.
Oh yeah.
You know? So, well, I should go. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sir.
Thank you very much for coming.